Time is 6 o'clock. We will now call the special public meeting of the Board of Trustees of Humble Independent School District to order. Thank you for joining us on tonight. Remember that the meetings of the board are open to the public but are not a meeting of the public. The board received the agenda and all supporting documentation several days in advance of the meetings, which allows us to ask and receive answers to many of our questions. Therefore, lengthy discussions are not always necessary on every agenda item, but as a board, we do have the appropriate knowledge and preparation for responses regarding the content of the meeting tonight. There are students and other guests present. To maintain decorum, respectful behavior is expected. Disruptive behavior and/or comments will not be allowed. And with that, our first item is Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask everyone to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the Texas flag. I ask that you please continue to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. We will now have a public hearing to discuss the 2025-2026 budget as required by Texas Education Code 44.004F. The board may hear public comments, discuss, and may adopt the budget. The board asks that comments pertain to the budget and be no longer than 3 minutes. I also want to add a little bit of context to special called board meetings as well. They're held to achieve a specific purpose. In order to focus on the work at hand, public comments are limited to those items that are on the agenda. Public comment on any other matters will continue to be allowed during regular board meetings. Our next regular school board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 15th. Board members can always be reached by email. Our email addresses are posted on the school district website. And if you want to go even a little further, you choose the icon for Board of Trustees to find trustees' email addresses. We appreciate your interest in Humble ISD. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this topic? All right, we have two. Yes, ma'am, please approach. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to address you, and I'd like to begin by welcoming our new board members. My name is Larissa Powell, and I take pride in keeping this community informed and the board accountable. Since it's report card season and we're talking about the budget, let's talk about performance, not just for the students, but for the board and the budget. And tonight, I came with a report card. Spoiler alert, this one's not going on the fridge. So let's start with the basics. F in fiduciary responsibility. A $7 million deficit is a rounding error. It's not. It's a 5-alarm financial fire. Your job is to safeguard the district's resources, not gamble our kids' future away. F in financial foresight. The decisions or lack thereof, that's what got us into the total failure to plan. We expect 9th graders to come to class prepared. Why are we giving trustees a pass? F in leadership. Now this one stings because instead of leading, you've outsourced your backbone to external counsel. And what have we gotten in return? Not progress, not stability, not restored trust, just invoices and more lawsuits. The only thing external counsel has been successful at is draining our budget. And while we're on the subject of leadership, the budget fails to deliver a proper raise to the Humble ISD police officers who protect our kids every single day. We also have threatened to take from Humble to give to Kingwood so Kingwood Foster Elementary could get an underground drainage system. You keep saying safety is priority. Well, words don't keep our campuses safe. Actions do. F in communication. Failure to communicate with other board members and ice them out of committees and decisions they should be a part of. Failure to respond to parents with legitimate concerns or not even giving them due process or a chance to air their grievances.
Please keep your comments related to the budget.
F in service to the community. Let's be honest, when TEA sends in a monitor, they're not showing up with balloons and cake, they're coming in because the board needs a babysitter at $180,000 a year. Where are we gonna find that money at, guys? And not because the students are out of control, but it's because the grown-ups are out of control. F in democracy and integrity. Most of you earned your seats fair and square. Otherwise, you're still hanging around like everyone knows that nobody wants to deal with it, and it's just getting a little bit awkward.
Please keep your comments related to the budget.
How are we going to pay for a special election when we're broke? But that's what needs to happen. So let's start here. Let's cancel overpriced legal contracts. Yes, Mr. Scarfo, that means daily calls to Elling Spalding must come to an end. And if they give us bad legal advice, why do we keep using them? Oh, we only have 3 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mrs. Powell. I believe, sir, if it's okay, Jeremy, I know you weren't on the list, sir, but I have no problem hearing from this gentleman as long as it's public.
Yeah, this is public hearing.
Okay, okay.
And so these comments will need to be related directly to the budget as the public hearing on the budget.
I'll only diverge to thank all of you for your volunteer service here. You don't get big salaries. In fact, you get no salaries at all. And it's very nice that qualified people not only are willing to serve on this board, but willing to fight for a seat on it. And we thank you very much. My name is George May. I am the proud husband of an elementary school librarian at Elm Grove Elementary School. My wife, Tonya Hinojosa May, is going to come up and speak. Please be kind to her. She is not a public speaker. In our budget, and I understand what Representative Cunningham fought as hard as he could for us, but librarians who teach every student in an elementary school, every student in a middle school, not true of high school, but they do have a vast teaching responsibility. My wife teaches every student at her school, but she is not a classroom teacher, and she is not getting the classroom teacher raise. That is inequitable. It is wrong. The legislature did allocate, I believe, $45 per student for support staff, and I guess a librarian who is required to be schooled in literacy, my wife, as I think every elementary school librarian in Humble is certified K through 12. They teach, they read, they do everything that a classroom teacher does, except they do it with every student. There are discretionary funds. There were funds, as Representative Cunningham will tell us, and I'm sure you all know, a much smaller amount of funds that were set aside by the legislature, but there are very few elementary school librarians when compared to classroom teachers. There's room in the budget to give them something, or we're going to have an exodus of those very important literacy professionals who teach every student. Does not have to be the $5,000. I don't know the budgetary constraints that y'all are working with, and y'all are all very familiar with them, and we just got a speech about a deficit in our budget, at least as it's projected. But we are going to lose qualified elementary school. They're going to do one of two things, as my wife will tell you. It's not for my wife. She is nearing retirement, and she is more concerned with the younger, qualified librarians who can teach our students. They're either going to leave the profession or they're going to go outside of Humble ISD. We can prevent that by throwing something to it. It doesn't have to be a bone, but it doesn't have to be $5,000, but it should be something. Thank you.
I know a lot of y'all. It's nice to see you. I've been with the district almost 35 years. So my husband's right. He really wanted me to say how old I was, but 35 years at the end of this coming year. And when I read that librarians weren't going to be included in that $5,000, I thought, I do, as my husband said, and probably 99%, 95% of the librarians teach every single child in the entire school, just like the music teachers, the art teachers, and the PE teachers who are somehow included in this, which is a little confusing to me. If anyone could explain that, I would love it. But I know that we teach every child. That includes the pre-K. That includes kindergarten. And indeed, I can teach from K to 12. So I would just like to say again, it's important that you treat us as teachers. We are teachers. We teach every single day. Every child in the entire building. Even before, that we're called specialists, because we are specialists. And even before I taught, or even before kindergarten was on the special schedule, I taught kindergarten anyway. Even before pre-K was on the schedule, I still taught pre-K, even when my other specialists weren't teaching them. So again, I really emphasize how important it is that if we have 600 children, I teach 600 children every day, every week, till the end of the school. So I think it's really important to treat us like you do the other teachers at our schools. It is the professional thing to do. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Anyone else? All right, moving on to the next part of our agenda. Update from State Representative Mr. Charles Cunningham regarding public education.
I'm going to actually pull you back one. We now need to do the questions and comments from patrons or employees. But did you have a presentation for? Okay. No,
Do we need to close the public hearing?
Yeah, so we'll need to close the public hearing.
Public hearing closed. All right. Formalities. And now, are there any normal commenters? Jeremy, I want to make sure I'm following procedure. Because my agenda is out of order. Are we good?
I believe we do have one member of public comment, that Ms. Powell, who signed up. I'm not sure if you have the list up there or.
It was
if
just
Ms.
Larissa,
Martin-
just Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mrs. Powell?
Good evening again. On May 3rd, the voters voted Mr. Karchoffer out. Instead of respecting that outcome, the board turned around, propped the door back open, rolled out the red carpet, and welcomed him right back in. No public vote, no transparency, just silence. Meanwhile, Ms. Brown was disqualified, and Ken just came back on the dais like nothing ever happened. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Fun fact, the holdover doctrine. Yeah, it doesn't apply here. You can't hold over a seat you lost. Instead of declaring that seat vacant like the law and basic logic require, you handed the keys back to the guy that came in dead last in the race. That's not, in my opinion, legally technical. It's not an oops. That's a deliberate choice to ignore the voters. Then the community sees it. Of course, it all happened the humble ISD way, just the usual in the dead of the night, cloak and dagger routine this board has turned to their choice of governing style. No public vote, no discussion, no squaring in, just a little black room magic, and poof, he's voting again. But you can't blame everything on bad legal advice or Dr. Fagan. Now, thanks to the Fabulous Four, we've allegedly got a TEA monitor on the way, so now's a good time to start cleaning out the house with transparency. I suggest that you release the preliminary TEA findings to the public. If you truly want transparency, prove it. Congratulations, Mr. Holmes, on your new presidency. I find it amusing that the same group that iced you out last year suddenly sees your value. And to Mr. Silva and Ms. Shaw, I don't envy you. You inherited a mess left behind by the board's bad decisions. So here's where we're at. Position 4 is vacant. Only 2 lawful paths exist. A special election, which, let's be real, we can't afford, given the projected budget deficit of about $7 million, and allegedly we have to pay for a TEA monitor. Funny how we can shell out millions of dollars to lawyers but not fund democracy or police officers or counselors or librarians. An appointment, which, let's be honest, is probably already in the works, and it's already being choreographed behind closed doors like an episode of Survivor. If that's your plan, then do it. Do it right, do it publicly, do it with integrity, because enough rubber stamping, enough backroom deals. If you really want to rebuild trust, appoint Natalie Carter. She's the 4th highest vote in the county. Or what about Tracy Shannon, who, if we're being technical, beat Ken? What about Scott Ford, a trusted and respected teacher of the district? Or Gracie, who ran a salad campaign? Or Judy Castillo, also a teacher? You've got options, and you really shouldn't be just picking them for us. We're calling balls and strikes here, and we're tired of the dysfunction and the Hunger Games style leadership. We want honesty. We want leadership.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell. Now we can move forward to the next part of the agenda, which is State Representative Charles Cunningham giving an update on public education. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
Let's do that. I see it on the left, but you already got it clicking, so I was just going to maybe just raise that hand, just keep clicking. No, we'll click. Want to say good evening to everyone. Mr. President, congratulations. To the rest of the board members, my good friend, Ken, appreciate you. Elizabeth, congratulations. Oscar, congratulations. Chris, Dr. Brown, and then, of course, my military man right here. It's just good to see everybody. We're going to give a little, summary, if you will, of what happened. This was a session that really kind of brewed over from the 88 session, 23. We finally got some things together. But I want to kind of go back just for a second, if I may. I want to go back to 1995. Yes, I'm going way back. 1995, there was a bill called SB 7 that was going to solve all of education's problems. And within 2 years, school districts were saying we needed funding. And that's when I kind of got involved. And lo and behold, in 2005, we were basically broke and we had the golden pennies and everything. And then we moved fast forward. I decided to do something. I got on the board in 2007, 2008. A good friend, Mr. Scarfo, got on the board. We had a recession. 2011, state came in and took $25 million from our school district. And so I said all that to say that while some of my colleagues talk about 2019, I can complain and say we still haven't been made right since 2011. We had to basically have a reduction in force. You remember that, Robert, laid off people. And so just fast forwarding where we're at, we're here now to a point where while you'll hear some of us say biggest ever, it's really just a start. It's just to kind of get us where we need to be going in the right direction. And so there's going to be some changes involved. The state has kind of took the initiative to kind of add some allotments, do some things. We know that it says, okay, you're handcuffing us, but not so. And before I go any further, I just want to give big kudos, Dr. Brown, to you and your staff. We were able to sit down and visit. Billy, appreciate it. Looked at this bill, HB2. In looking at it, we've also, well, with the help of Billy, we found some opportunities going into the next session. So I've already notified the chairman that we've got some interim work to do because there's some opportunities there. But anyway, let me, there you go. There you go. Now, before I get started there, just kind of briefly, just kind of go over some things. The session, which was the 89th session, there are basically 150 state representatives, 31 senators. Of course, Dan Patrick runs the Senate. This year, we had a new speaker, Dustin Burrows was our speaker. There were 9,240 bills that were introduced in the legislation. And out of that 9,240, 1,300 basically were sent to the governor for signature. That's 1,300. And so with that, the legislators required, our main thing is to pass a budget. In 2023, the budget was $325 billion. You see here, this year's appropriation was $338 billion, $0.2 billion. Most of that with the general revenue was $49.2 billion. And basically all that basically says is that, we hear it mentioned, we don't want to, spend more than we don't have. And so basically, this basically keeps us under state limits. 16 billion below the limit on general revenue spending, 2.9 billion on the limit on what we can spend without borrowing from the state, and 3 billion below the limit on our tax money that can be constitutionally spent. But then we want to go into this, what we call this historic budget. And before I do that, I just want to just add that in 2021, $75 billion was spent on public education. In 2023, it was $85 billion spent on public education. As we break down the budget, 55% of the budget is spent on public education. The other 30% is spent on public health. I say that because this year, the speaker put me back on pub ed. I was only one of 2 Republicans to go back. The other one was the chairman. And then he put me on pub health. So I was involved in spending a lot of money. But this year, this budget is going to be over $100 billion. This year, $100 billion. And so what does that include? So we've heard some of the comments already. $4 billion is going to be for teachers' compensation. $500 million for support staff. And yes, that does include librarians, it includes cafeterias, it includes bus drivers. Unfortunately, Mike, it also includes instructionals because the legislature, in our ultimate wisdom, which is not that much, that's why we have to keep going back at this thing, wanted to focus on teachers. Right now, the teachers are the backbone that we need in our classroom. Right now, the legislature needs to make sure that we treat the teachers as the professionals that they are and pay them accordingly. Try to get them where we can, let them know we appreciate what they're doing because they are also holding one of our most valuable commodities, and that is our children, and in my instance, my grandchildren. We had $430 million for safety upgrades. I want to say $850 million towards special education. I'm going to talk a little bit more on that. And then we had, of course, $369 million to reduce the cost of health insurance for teachers. And we know that they need that. But let me just break and just talk about what about our area right here. We are in what we call Region 4. There's 20 regions in the state of Texas. Region 4 has about close to 50 school districts in that region. With this so-called, as we want to call it, financial boost, $1 billion of that is coming to Region 4. Over $1 billion is coming to Region 4. So take, for instance, when we talk about new funding, above current funding levels, excuse me, Houston ISD is getting $195 million in new funding. Cy-Fair is getting $126 million in new funding. Katy ISD, $103 million in new funding. Fort Bend, $80 million in new funding. Your neighbor, Aldine ISD, $61 million in new funding. And of course, as we looked at our numbers, Billy, somewhere between the neighborhood of 50 and 51 million in new funding. And that's going to total over $1 billion that we're getting. And so when we look at this here, we see right now, largest teacher pay in history, provides, across the board pay raises for teachers with at least 3. And of course, these pays are going to be different from those that are in the rural areas. Rural areas are going to be getting a little bit more. The special education, the $850 million, is going to overhaul special education. In the '88 session, I worked on several special education bills along with Lacey Hull, J.C. Taton. We had an increase from I want to say it was like 15 million to about 30 million in special ed. That number is going to be going up with the advent also of House Bill 6685 by Senator Betancourt. Of course, some of my language is included in that bill. We're also going to increase money to the School Foundation Program Fund, working with the Education Service Centers. That's going to be an opportunity, especially for us out here in Humble ISD. It is already estimated that probably statewide there are probably 700 and almost 800,000 kids that are classified as special needs. That's an average of almost 12% of your student population in every district. And so you can look at that. And so resources are needed. I've met with teachers throughout the district and throughout the state, and that is one of the areas that we really need to really focus in on providing the proper resources for that special population. The teacher preparation and certification reforms. This is going to be paying teachers, candidates during their training, high rewards. I won't touch on the Teachers Bill of Rights right quick, but I want to revert to what they call a teacher's incentive allotment. Teacher's incentive allotment. There were groups that were in Austin that were trying to kill the teacher's incentive allotment. I will say that District 127 benefited greatly from the teacher's incentive allotment to the tune last year of $15 million. And I know Humble ISD, you guys were at least over $2 million of it. And so with that increase coming, we just had a great increase that the governor just announced. Since its inception, we have had over $1 billion in the teacher's incentive allotment. Now we are also adding another level to that allotment that's going to be giving more teachers more opportunities to be able to, get the bonuses and much needed pay raises that they need. The last one on the list right here, temporarily, this Teachers Bill of Rights. This is something in my visit, especially up north in the north area of our state, that it was really highlighted. And this is basically going to protect and empower public school teachers by limiting the penalties for contract resignations. Not going to read all of it to you, but basically it's providing rights for our teachers and stuff. One of the other things that we want to also kind of highlight here as I move forward, I think I heard my good friend George May kind of mention the permanent staff retention allotment. What the legislature did, we know that the basic allotment before we did all this was at $6,130. Our House bill actually boosted it up somewhat. When it got over to the Senate, they looked at it and we said, you know what, we need to get rid of some of these unfunded mandates. And how are we going to do that? Well, let's put that money to good use. And so now we've created this here allotment. This is going to be an ongoing allotment. We've also got learning reforms. I want to highlight one of my colleagues, Harold Dutton. Harold Dutton had a House Bill 123. It's been included into HB 120. House Bill HB 123 is going to allow for early childhood care, literacy, math, and also for eyeglass testing. And so it's going to be from that K to 3 also with the teachers in the math intervention, going to be allowing for them to be paid also. One of the other big things that we did is the career and technical education. That was in House Bill 20, where we're going to be able to collaborate also with the schools and look at those areas where we can go ahead and transition those kids that aren't going to be going to college, that they can go and start work as being a plumber or electrician in this field here. School safety allotment, I think I mentioned that earlier. That bill was funded to the tune of, see if I had it here, I want to say it was like 430 million. Yeah, 430 million. And then, of course, at the last down here, this additional school finance reform, this is where the bulk of the changes went into to address the unfunded mandates. Districts have been having to cover the cost of differences for transportation, excuse me, their utilities, health care, and also, I'm sure you're familiar with the rehire, teacher rehire. You know, all that was on the district. That is no longer going to be on the district. That is going to be included, and it's going to be an ongoing cost. Speaking of reforms, this is part of a reform, but speaking of reforms, I wanted to kind of highlight a few that I know that you're going to get questions about, and there's many more, but I know you're going to get questions. HB 6 is a teacher's rights bill. It kind of strengthens the rights that the teachers have, especially in their classroom. I know that some of you might have heard of an incident that was in, I want to say it was in Claiborne up in Texas, where a teacher lost her eye as a student threw a pencil, had a meltdown, and the teacher ended up losing their eye. I've had teachers that have been hit by objects from students, and we're not just talking regular high school students. We're talking junior high and even kindergarten, all the way up to our grade school, K through 5, where they've received concussions. And you've got, it's just hard to control the kids. This Teachers' Bill of Rights is going to enhance the disciplinary authority for our teachers. Also going to include stronger accountability for serious offenses. Gives the teacher classroom authority to remove one of these kids, and if the kid goes through our discipline process and is expelled, well, we're going to enhance our virtual education. This is something that UMBL's always been big on, virtual ed. That was another piece of legislation that there were some in Austin that wanted to kill. And then, of course, it's going to expedite removal for dangerous students. So it won't take that long at all for that student to actually be dismissed. There was two other bills, and when we look at here, HB 100, this is more going to be involved with the State Board of Education, especially on the tax dollars of buying the books and materials. HB 10 and HB 11 will be probably, while they're not mandated, these are voluntary. It's up to you, the school district. I will say on the 10 Commandments, no cost to the district, but if somebody volunteers to do it, then it's done. HB 11 permits schools to adopt voluntary prayer and Bible reading studies, instructional, as long as instruction is not being disrupted. One of the other bills, and somebody had already mentioned it, I wanted to mention House Bill, let me see if I get it right here. Chief, I know you know the bill. House Bill 42, what is it? Tell me right quick. 4226. That's the police law enforcement grant. It'll allow, yeah, there you go. Help me out there, Billy. Yeah. Trying all these numbers and I can't remember them all. Yeah, you got it up right now. So that, and this is something that I was able to go over with Dr. Brown and the Finance Committee, but that bill is going to allow a stipend for our police officers of $6,500 for the district to go ahead and apply for that grant. I will kind of back a little bit and say, you know, you'll hear said that this is the biggest ever. In my humble opinion, it's just a start. And the start is because from 1997, since I've got involved with the school district, and I was 24 years, 12 as a volunteer and 12 on the school board, reforms have always been there, but the money has been used, but the reforms were never initiated. So the state is going to be starting to take a different approach. It is my goal to work closely with the school districts. I have 5 school districts in District 127. I want to take this time to thank Dr. Brown because we talked constantly while we were there. Chris Parker for showing up, appreciate that. And then nothing would have happened over the last 2 sessions with my good friend Robert Scarfold that we were just always constantly talking, and he was reminding me, you need to get us some money. You need to get us some money. So we did that, and then of course, Ken and I talked a lot because being on the finance committee. So we, the board. I will say this to the public. I don't know who's going to be, board members in the future coming, but at this point, I am supporting this board and what you guys do. But most importantly, I want it to be known that I am supporting the superintendent, Dr. Brown. And so with that, I think I might be ended. I know it was kind of a fast. So yeah, that's at the end right there. You can get it there, Rusty. Be happy afterwards. Always call me. You guys got my numbers. Any questions? I look forward, Billy, especially to working with you, especially with the insight that you gave me on the potential allotments of using enrollment. That is a process that we are moving toward. We're going to slowly get away from what we're doing now, even though we will need to be able to wait ADA. We'll need to be able to do that. But I think making it fair where districts can be properly paid for what they do is the goal. And so once again, Mr. President, I will yield back to you, board members. Congratulations to the new board members, Oscar, Elizabeth, and everybody else. And that's it. Thank you.
Representative Cunningham, do you have time, if any of the board members have any questions, do you have time or do you have another engagement after this?
No, I have time.
Okay.
So
Opening it up to the board.
better not leave. Better stay right here.
Representative Cunningham, I just want to thank you for all your hard efforts, all your hard work the last months and months. So thank you for doing what you do. I know
right.
you take a lot of arrows, and we could relate to that to some extent, but you take a lot more. So thank you for standing in the gap for us. Really appreciate it.
All right. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Cunningham, thank you very much for your time tonight. I just have been working with Mr. Beatty and others on this budget, Finance Committee, moving it forward. You started in January and you finally come to this point in time. Can you let the public know that the $5,000 that are going to the 087 PEAMD teachers was a mandate from the legislature, and it didn't come from our administration or the board, was the intent from the legislature was to take care of the classroom teacher, and it's not a decision that was made here locally?
Yes, Ms. Grabowski. While I don't know all the classifications that they have for all the employees, I can tell you that the legislature's intent was strictly for classroom teachers. And of course, like I said, even us in suburban are not getting as much as those that are in the rural. So those salaries are much higher. But as I said, this is a start. And the opportunities that you and I talked about, even though it's not for this particular allotment, the other allotments provide for opportunity because all the monies that school districts are using for transportation, utilities, things of this nature, now you're not spending it on that. The state is taking care of that. And so that just puts more money in the bucket to help you guys decide, and it's a board decision, Dr. Brown, you and your team, on how you guys are going to do that. And so, you know, I would just tell you, if there's a will, there's a way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Representative Cunningham, I just also want to say thank you. I know that I hear, as of recent, a lot of early mornings and sometimes late nights asking you questions as well. And again, just appreciate your availability. I think some of the questions that I have are around the teacher safety and that Bill of Rights. I think the one thing that I just would love for you to expound on just a little bit, if you can, is the removal of students having teachers feel empowered and enabled. What does that mean from a legislative standpoint in terms of how does that translate down into the school district? Because I know we have to kind of create the framework for that, but they're giving us the apparatus for it, right? What does that really mean?
Well, I think as you look at it, when we look at current discipline policies, the discipline policies are somewhat, well, let's just put it, we're going to try to find balance. While we're not going to try to actually target students, because that was a big concern, especially as we were talking about some of the bills that we had, because automatically, you know, not everybody's a psychologist, and because my child is loud, doesn't mean he's unruly. But as you do that, we're going to try to find that balance, because besides the parent, who knows that student best? And so that's kind of like where it's going. But it had gotten out of hand, especially, as I said, you know, some of the districts that I visited and what they were dealing with, you know, not only, you know, with, you know, aggressive behavior, but sometimes just outright just abusive language behavior. And so we don't want our teachers to have to, you know, put up with that abuse. And so, you know, I know I'm here in this position right now to support teachers, and I would know that you guys are there to do the same thing. And it's all about quality education. And as I look at all you guys up here, you should all be thinking like I'm thinking. None of this is about me. It's about the next generation. So, but that's what it, in a nutshell, it's trying to find that proper balance, especially when we're dealing with our discipline policies.
Thank you, sir. Thank
All
you.
right.
Yes, Mrs. Parker.
Mr. Cunningham,
Yes, ma'am.
so I think I met you in this very room 24 years ago,
Been a long time.
and we've worked together on so many things, and I just want to say how thankful that I am to have you and somebody of your character and dignity up in Austin. I got to go see you, got to go sit in the gallery and watch you work, and I'm just so thankful to have you representing Humble ISD.
Well, thank you, Ms. Parker. I will, you know, kind of end it on this. Even though, you know, I come from a family of teachers, my wife was a teacher, you know, I wasn't a teacher, but I became a board member. But moving into this position as a legislature, you know, it's about education. And education is at all levels. You know, whether you're ISD, charter, homeschool. I didn't know that District 127 is the second largest in the state for homeschool kids. Never knew. And so, you know, each child has a right to have an opportunity to succeed, regardless of how you want to be educated. So, but anyway, I appreciate it, and appreciate, I think I said it earlier, but, you know, before we go to Austin, we go and meet. First thing is with all the ISDs and what are the priorities. And I sit down with your committee, Chris, and we looked at things, and it was amazing to see how many vape shops were near our schools. And we said we had to do something about that, in addition to some other things. But that was number one. And because of your push, we had 3 bills that dealt with it. 2 of them got passed. And so there's going to be one going into effect, as I shared with everybody, because of Chris and the committee, September 1st. that you can't have a bait shop that's within 500 feet, I want to say, of a church and 1,000 feet of a school. I might be getting that mixed up. But that's going into effect. Governor's on board with it. We got some other stuff that addresses advertising because, well, let's just be true. This is marketed for kids when you look at it. And so the one with the stiffer penalties didn't quite make it across the finish line, but we'll look to next session to do that because, you know, realizing this, you know, kids that get caught with this in school, then you guys have a problem, you know. And there's a discipline problem. There's expulsion. There's all this that comes into play. And so, but anyway, I'll say all that to say thank you, Chris. And once again, board, thank you once again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Also, want to just make sure I recognize Mike Marshall, City of Humble Councilman. Could you just go and stand and let everybody know who you are? Just real quick, just want to make sure we honor Humble City Councilman. All right. We're going to go ahead and now move on to the next agenda item, 2A, 2025-2026 budget adoption. And Mr. Billy Beatty has a presentation.
Good evening, trustees, Dr. Brown, Representative Cunningham. Thank you for that explanation of the recent legislation. We are very much appreciative of your work. So we've reached budget adoption, and tonight there is a little bit of change, but a lot of what is in this budget is similar to what we saw on June 3rd. So I'll highlight some of those differences. Just a quick review of our process. We do zero-based budgeting process. There's a lot of stakeholders involved in the review and analysis of things that are submitted, the work that goes into evaluating everything that is inside this budget. It takes a lot of people, and so there's a lot of thoughtful review in everything that's in this budget. There's a lot of purpose and meaning behind every dollar. So overall, for the budget timeline, here we are, June 17th, proposed budget adoption. During a legislative year, we're at the mercy of the legislative process oftentimes. So, the June 3rd budget workshop was really where we got to present some of the findings from the legislative session. And we worked really hard out of the, Representative Cunningham mentioned it, thousands of bills. We're reading every one of those bills. We're interpreting every one of those bills. And they're oftentimes changed, feels like many times. And so it takes a lot of effort, work. We do that, and we do that to make sure that as soon as we know something that we present it to you all. So we make sure that we have the most current and accurate information for you to make decisions based off of, and time to discern. So we are here at, and the work's not over with that. So we need to become experts on all of these changes by September 1st so we can get all of these things executed for the new year. So I have this slide up. I'm not trying to throw any other districts under the bus. I'm just trying to demonstrate and provide perspective about it has been difficult in school finance for the past couple years. The start of the last biennium, 23-24, this is just our core group here, the local 14 districts that we compare ourselves to. 85% of them adopted a recurring operating budget deficit. That's significant. And of those, 69% of those districts ended in recurring deficit. And the thing about is a recurring deficit is it's hard enough to decide what to add to the budget, but it's even harder to decide what to cut from a budget. And that's why, and I also included here, 85% of our local peer districts have adopted a local a recurring deficit budget for 24-25. And we'll see how they end this year. That takes some time. Everyone's on a different fiscal year most of the time, and before audited financials come out, that doesn't normally happen until November. So that's why I don't have a year-end position for that. But as I look at other districts right now, it still looks like about 80% of what I see is proposed deficits right now of the same peer group. So I just give you that and we haven't adopted a deficit budget, and we're not bringing you a deficit budget to review tonight. So just really proud of the work, and I'm very thankful to Representative Cunningham for his work on delivering some more funding, because school districts definitely can use it right now, and we're very much appreciative of that. So here's a few of the primary finance-related bills that are out there. The House Bill 2 is really what we're going to focus on tonight again, and the impact from that major school finance overhaul bill. So the House Bill 2, this is the same slide I showed last time, and of that $52-ish million that we expect of new money, keep in mind that's over the 2-year period. So of new money that we're going to receive in 25-26, the budget that we're recommending tonight, we expect to see about $26 million of new money. Now, in the second year, we're looking to see the special ed intensity kick in and some other grow your own program that's going to provide some new funding in the second year of the biennium. But the 52 million, where that comes from, is that 26 that is new money in 25-26, that continues to be funded in the second year. So that's how you get that 52 total $1 million in new money. So to highlight some of the allotments, the basic costs allotment, that's very significant for us, $5.1 million. Teacher retention, classroom teachers receiving that $2,500 or $5,000, depending on years of experience. That's about half of this new money. And then the support staff retention, and that $1.75 million equates to about a 3% raise for that group. And this is that group that includes the librarians, instructional coaches, everybody but administrators. You're not allowed to spend that money on administrators that you receive from this allotment. Yes.
Mr. Beatty, could you just repeat that one more time? Because I think it gets missed, that the 26 million, the reason you don't see that showing up in the next column is because that 26 million, you're going to get it again, but it's already spoken for.
That's
so
right.
There's your 52 million. And what we're saying is we're going to actually increase by 2.4 that we're going to find. But I think, and I can understand people who aren't that familiar with these budgets as we are and how this works, but it's not another 26 million and covering that 26 million too. It's just once, right? And so it's already spoken for. That second 26 million spoken for with this first year budget.
That's correct. And the state just has to fund that for 2 years. So that's how they make sure that they have enough allotted to cover for both years. But it's just the 26 is the new money. We'll budget that, and then the only new money we'll have is what's showing in the 26-27 column. And something important for y'all to note for us is why it stays about 52 million and you're not seeing 54 million, is because we're falling out of fast growth. So I anticipate that we'll lose another $2 to $3 million in 26-27 and be completely out of fast growth. So that's why you land at that, and the state knows that as well. So that's why the 52 is a pretty accurate number. And so overall, these are what a lot of the allotments mean for Humble ISD specifically. I just, so for a reminder for what we talked about last budget workshop, After it's all said and done, we roll all of the new expenditures revenue into a by-function budget. And that's ultimately what you all approve. And then that's what we bring, if we ever amend that budget, that's what we're bringing to you each board meeting to amend it if we ever change any of those amounts by function. And so the budget presentation that we presented last workshop, we left about $153,000 in surplus there for the operating budget. And so presented you with a balanced budget with a little bit of surplus. During last workshop, you all provided a lot of feedback and suggestions. And so we really looked, very much at every one of those suggestions, evaluating and analyzing what we could do to integrate those suggestions into the budget. But keep in mind, we were working with $153,000 of surplus, so we won't be able to create new revenue in this model. So in order to add something, we'd have to work within the $153,000 or potentially cut something that's already been presented or something already within the budget. So some of those suggestions, I just have them up here as a reminder, the lifting the 0 to 2 year teachers to provide that same level of House Bill 2 support for those because they weren't necessarily included in the House Bill 2 mandate. And provide the $2,500 and $5,000 to non-classroom teachers, but who are on the teacher pay scale. And this would be that group of instructional coaches and librarians, nurses, I'm trying to think of everybody, but there's a number of positions that may not be defined as a classroom teacher, but are included on our teacher pay scale. There was also feedback of, could we provide a 4% increase for all, everybody else, non-classroom teachers, support staff, everybody else, and then could we look at $70,000 for starting police pay with a longevity stipend to help with retention, and then also could we look at expanding our TIA program for special ed teachers. So we have been working quite a bit on this. I just want to kind of give you overall, here's the dollars of what we project that every one of those suggestions would cost and need if we were to add them to the budget. The $4 million, we don't have it within the 1.53. That's a pretty significant number to cut. So it was a difficult task, but I just kind of want to give you some more results from our analysis and evaluation of all these items that y'all provided. So if we were to provide and stay with the 3% increase for the 0 to 2 year teachers, classroom teachers, this will allow, we anticipate that the market is moving about 2%. We see, I've only seen a handful of 3% in this area, and one of those being a significant deficit. But it looks like if we go with our 3% for this group, that we'll keep those the starting pay at 66 looks like it'll be very, very competitive, and it'll be allow us to stay above market in that grouping of teachers. If we kept and stayed with the original recommendation of the 3% increase for non-classroom teachers, but those that are on the teacher pay scale, this would be the librarians, instructional coach, that group. We took a really a deep look at this one. We definitely value this group of staff members, and I'll say to prove it, we spend about double in this category than all of our peers. We do value the roles that they provide and the support that they provide to our students and teachers. A lot of districts in our area specifically, about 46% of our peers have eliminated librarians, and we did not do that. We have continued to prioritize and value those positions. I'll also say that about 30% of our peers have cut instructional coaches, or they have moved to a hybrid half teaching, half instructional coach role. So we have the most expansive instructional coach program amongst our peers. And so when we took a look at that, and this is just base pay to base pay, but it looks like we'll be above market in that area, about 4% above market. And that further demonstrates our commitment to that group of employees and the value that we see in those staff members. So really proud to be able to keep our family whole and value those positions when it's been very difficult to be able to do those things. As demonstrated by a lot of districts out there. The 3% increase for everybody else, the support staff, this is just every non-classroom teacher, the midpoint grade, pay grade folks. This is our auxiliary staff, bus drivers, custodians, APs, just everybody else. If we were to provide that 3% increase, it looks like we will gain about 1% on the market in all of those other areas. I will say that you'll also remember that we talked about additional equity to some positions that we have taken a really hard look at with salary studies. Those areas that we found are very under market, very below market. We have added additional increases to those areas to lift them. And so everybody else that wasn't included in that salary study, the 3% looks like we will gain on the market. So really proud of, again, I'm seeing 2%, 1% out there, so a 3% should, I do expect for us to gain on the market there. And then the 70,000 for police officers, what we did look at is that the 68 that we presented originally to you brought us within 100% of the current market. And that's the overall broad market. So the cities are paying a lot more. School districts are, under that. Higher ed's included in that. So we looked at, and the reason why we brought you 68 is because that brought us within 100% of the overall market on average. When we thought a little bit about that, if we could go 69, we don't know what everyone's going to do in the future. All those other ones were based off of what we see happening, and we don't necessarily know what police officers in other jurisdictions are going to receive. But if we were to lift that from 68 to 69 starting salary for police officers, it would put us at 101.5% of the current market. So it gives us a little bit of cushion to remain competitive throughout the year. And then the $5,000 per 5 years of service longevity would further support that retention. And what we found is that it's difficult. It's competitive out there to hire and keep police officers. So we did include a $5,000 longevity pay for police officers and senior police officers because we did see that it was difficult to hire and retain those staff members. So this is a lot of effort and lift to try to make sure that we have a police officer at every campus and can provide that safety for our students and staff. And then finally, we had we heard the feedback about the teacher incentive allotment and special ed specifically. We are looking at that. We have some categories that we believe can be included right now, and then we're looking at evaluating the other areas that we could submit we have to define a measurement tool for growth, and then we need to submit that to TEA in the spring and ultimately get approved, and then we can add even more job classifications in this allotment. And this doesn't cost anything because whatever we get approved, the state will fund that for us. So this is a no budget increase here. And I will say,
Mr. Beatty?
yes.
I just want to put you on notice, and I'll state this publicly. I'll take you at your word, but I put you guys on notice, you, Mr. Phipps, I don't see him here, Mr. Gardner, Dr. Brown, that we make that happen with our special ed classroom teachers and even the paras, that they can qualify for TIA.
I believe we have a meeting Thursday morning to.
Great.
to
I'm not going to rest till it happens.
Yep.
So, okay, just so you know, thank you.
And I'll say, this is quite the balancing act. There's so many needs, and just, trying our best to, provide what we can with what we have here. And so that every one of these is important. But we were able to find a way to move forward with the TIA special ed. We're working towards that. And then lifting the police and adding that longevity a little bit to where we saw that maybe we could have been a little deficient there, lifting that area so we can get in front of that. All right, so just now, that budget by function ultimately that you adopt, you can see where that police increase had taken effect for the police officers and senior police officers. It puts us at about a $3,500 surplus. So still we're able to bring forward to you a balanced budget and really utilize every dollar almost that we have projected to come to us. So just another, just like the state is funding us for 2 years, we're not losing sight of the 2-year plan. Just to take a look at what we have planned for this first year of the biennium, the 25-26 budget that you're adopting, you may be adopting tonight. It leaves us with a little bit of capacity in our budget, and I want to highlight what this capacity is. This capacity is what we, because we won't have new money for the new year of the biennium, this is where we look really closely at our existing budget, and this is what could be reallocated into the budget for the 26-27 year. Right now, this could be vacancy savings. This could be unspent operational budget money that is a big question mark if it holds true, but we're trying to plan for that. So this is where we go into those efficiency, we do our own efficiency audits and make sure that we can do our best to deliver on this capacity to reallocate future, potentially in the 26-27 year. This would be maximizing everything that we have possible. So it's good to hear Representative Cunningham mention this is a start and the work is still going to continue, because at this point you can see that we'll be dependent on the legislature to come through for some additional funding. We'll be in a tough spot. But there's no guarantee of any of this I'm putting, but we want to, if we don't have a plan, we're not, we got to have a plan to try and reach that goal. So that's what this is on 26-27. So just I'll go through this quickly since we've already discussed it these are the things that were already in the budget from last workshop that I presented on. The 3% on average increase for those 0-2 year, that lifts our starting teacher pay to $66,000. That'll make us a leader. We expect to gain ground there from what we're seeing. And the $2,500 for classroom teachers with 3 to 4 years of teaching experience, the $5,000 for the classroom teachers with 5 or more years of experience. And this is per the state's instruction on that allotment there, the teacher retention allotment. And it ends up being about 7% on average for all those teachers with 3 or more years of experience. So very significant. increase to classroom teachers. So for the non-teacher group, that's everybody else, the support staff, the auxiliary staff, instruction coaches, nurses, librarians, everyone else. We're recommending that 3% raise for all the non-teacher, classroom teacher staff. And then just referencing that additional equity adjustment for those groups that we see we have fallen significantly below the market and risk losing or not being able to hire some of those staff members. So some of those include the child nutrition, special education, paras, the police officers that we've talked about, manual trades, and the police officers and senior police officers there. The manual trades groups, we found that we were falling below market there, and some management positions. As far as the health plan, I just, I want to reiterate that we have the best health plan around, the most affordable health plan around. We are recommending a employer increase to the premiums and an employee increase to the premiums. And I have no increase recommended for the high deductible plan, but there is a small increase on the primary plan. This is we need to fund the health plan. Healthcare costs continually go up. We're trying to solve healthcare. We're making progress on that, but we do need to provide more funding to the plan. And we didn't want to take away that raise that we're providing. So you can see right here, we tried to provide just for this small increase to those monthly premiums for employees. So employee only will go up by $20 a month. And that's the largest category of who participates in the health plan, the employee only category. And then some of the plan design changes that we're working through is it looks like we will try to make a pharmacy benefit manager change. This will be a seamless change. We'll work very hard to make sure that that's a very seamless change. And along with that pharmacy benefit manager change, we'll decrease the copay for specialty drugs, actually, so another benefit for staff. And then there's some small increase to max out-of-pocket and deductibles as well. And high deductible plans specifically, the IRS increases those every year, so we have to keep up with that. So, there are a little bit of that just mandated onto us. And for medical plan, I showed this slide last time, but I just want to demonstrate how significantly lower our premiums are than anyone else. I took TRS Active Care districts and I gathered their average premiums, and I looked at the other self-funded districts in the area, and I created the average for what they charge for their plan, similar plans. And you can just see, I mean, these are thousands of dollars that our employees are saving every year. And I'll say, this is going to be even better, because when I created this slide, TRS the same day, Active Care had announced 10% premium increases to their plan. So that's not reflective of here. This is everybody's current rates and our new rates. So we're really putting ourselves at a disadvantage. I know this is going to be better throughout the year. And we have shown, hey Rusty, is something? Can you go? I really wanted to show this next slide.
Mr. Beatty, while we have a
yeah.
little break, so back to, I know Mr. and Ms. May were here, and they were talking about the librarians, and I just don't know what the districts around us are going to do without librarians with SB 13. I mean, there are really going to be some challenges, and it's just, I just want our instructional coaches, our librarians to know that this board supports them, and we really would like to see more than the 3%.
Yeah, the other districts, I don't know. A lot of them are having the PTO, volunteer and work in the library and take shifts for that. But it is going to be even more difficult for them going forward. Okay, so I talked about the savings of our health plan, and I just want to, we look at the chart when we compare ourselves base pay to base pay for our teachers. And this is what was shown last workshop. And you can see that we fall below the line when we just compare ourselves base pay to base pay for teachers. And we have a gap that if we just lifted by $2 million more to the budget, that we could meet all of those the district average for all of those years of service down at the bottom, those steps. And so another way to look at this data is that 80% of our staff members participate in our health plan. And it's often forgotten the impact of health insurance and benefits to your total compensation. But when you integrate you apply what those employees at those other districts would pay for their insurance and what we pay for our insurance, so you just deduct those off of those base pay salaries. This is how that chart looks now. And we meet or exceed every single step amongst our peers. So I just feel like this helps demonstrate the significance and importance of our low premiums on the health plan. And this is before the savings you get whenever you use the health plan, where we've talked about totally free health care in many cases with Next Level and Patient's Choice and pharmacy. If you left Humble ISD and went to another district, the couple $1,000s that you may gain in base pay, you would take home less pay after it's all said and done if you participate in the health plan. So we also had special education. We have the growth in special education, and so we are devoting resources to be able to support those students in that area. Many positions and some software that we need to implement. The operational budget requests, these are the things that came through the process that we took a look at. Nothing has changed from last time. Focusing on safety, security, technology, really some cyber security still at the same time. So nothing has changed here, but these are what we would add into the recurring budget to fulfill these needs. And then we're opening our last new campus, and I personally never thought that day would ever come. When I was in high school here, we've basically doubled and grown a Galena Park since that day today. And I'm a lot older than I look, so it's not like that was like 5 years ago. It was a long time ago. But we need to staff Lake Houston Middle School, and although we get a lot of transfers because we're not growing overall in enrollment, but we're adding special education programs at Lake Houston Middle School, so we need staff, and there's just generally a whole load set that we have to provide for police officer, custodians, child nutrition, the nurse, librarian, instructional coaches. All of those positions are included in Lake Houston Middle School. And then after we got through with all of the recurring budget items, there's still some items that look like they would be more of a one-time in nature expense. So nothing has changed from this recommendation for our one-time items, and we would utilize our assigned fund balance for these items here. One of the big ones here is a retention stipend that we started back in 2019 with the implementation of House Bill 3. This is a stipend that all of our non-teacher staff get because House Bill 3 came out and we didn't have enough time to implement it by start of school. So we ended up doing the stipend to implement the rules of House Bill 3. And we ended up rolling the teacher stipends into their base pay, but we never did anything with everybody else, the non-teacher staff. So that would be recommending to keep this program going that we have been doing. This is a very significant retention tool for bus drivers and custodians and everyone on the operations side that benefits from this stipend. And just to take a look at how that would impact us if we went forward with that, $4.5 million worth of one-time expenses. Right now, I project that we'll have about $55 million assigned fund balance at year end, and this would leave us still in about $50 million assigned fund balance position. And just to remind everyone, this assigned fund balance is the amount over our 25% that's required to be held in unassigned fund balance. So unassigned fund balance is that fund balance that the 25% of our annual expenditures we don't touch. That allows for us to manage cash flow and keep us able to pay bills, pay the payroll, keep the lights on. So this is on top of that unassigned fund balance. So overall, just another look at general fund that we're recommending tonight. That surplus of $3,589 ends up being $543 million, a little over $543 million total revenue, $543 million expenditures for that balanced operating budget. Child nutrition budget, we are planning and recommending a deficit budget here. This is a unique situation that we have too much money in this fund. And so before we risk losing this money, we need to have a plan to spend it. So we have some one-time expenditures included in this to upgrade equipment. Last year, we bought a lot of new equipment so we can start not just heating food up, but preparing and cooking food. So we've redesigned our menu, retrained our staff, and we're going to continue to build on that, the equipment upgrades, and this also includes some new line upgrades because we feel like there's a lot of broken lines out there that we're not able to utilize. They're very old, and so this will allow us to replace some of those and not impact our recurring budget, just leverage that one-time money there. Kind of interesting situation when you have too much money here that you have to spend some of it. Yes.
Mr. Beatty, let me just ask you a question. Are we ending the current fiscal year with a $7 million deficit, or are we projecting a $7 million deficit for the next operating year?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Last year, we recommended a $15 million deficit in this fund, so we made progress, but
no, I'm sorry. You must have misunderstood. I mean, overall for the district, because it was said that we have a $7 million deficit.
We will spend $7 million more than the revenue we receive in the 25-26 year for child nutrition, but our fund balance will still be.
I'm talking about general fund.
Oh, general fund.
I can see this and I understand that, but it's said that we have a $7 million deficit.
Oh, no, no deficit in
current.
general fund, and we have not recommended that. We will not recommend that. Very proud of our work to be able to.
I'm just saying because there was a comment made that we have a $7 million deficit, and
unsure.
Okay, thank you.
Child nutrition, we are recommending that, but general operating recurring budget, no deficit. Yes.
Hey, Mr. Beatty, can you just kind of give a little bit of context? Not trying to put other districts, but to kind of just, I think, paint a picture of, I think, the financial acuity and just how we've managed our money over the last several years. How many would you say neighboring districts operate in a deficit budget? We don't, but how many just rough number?
I know it. It's 85% of the 14
What is that?
tier districts.
Was that 14? 15?
Yeah, 14 districts, so 12-ish of those are operating in deficit. So almost everybody, why I wanted to highlight, once you get into a recurring deficit, it's very, very, very difficult to get out because these are hard enough decisions to allocate and add money to the budget. When you have to cut, and that's where many of our peers have had to cut librarians and cut back on instructional coaches and all of these other areas. It's been difficult. Inflation, COVID, attendance, everything. I'm just really, and you can't change it you can't change it in 1 year. That's why you see the deficits keep coming. And so we're very thankful for the new money coming through. It's going to help us, but it's a lot of work. We don't stop working on the budget. If y'all adopt this budget tonight and approve it, we don't stop tomorrow and take a break. That's where we're getting into that capacity and trying to plan for 26, 27, trying to plan for 27, 28. It's a never-ending process of analysis and review. So very proud to be in not a deficit budget. Yes.
One more thing, and I didn't want to interrupt you earlier, but you just said the magic word to me, attendance. Can you just remind everyone what kind of an impact it has when you guys and Mr. Perkins really led the charge along with this staff to help us do that, but just even a 0.5% increase in ADA or a 1%,
So
will be
0.5%, even if we could move the needle 0.5%, that's $2 million for us. If a whole percent, $4 million, a little over $4 million. These are very significant numbers, and to put a little bit of perspective and context to that $4 million number, well, that's a 1% raise generally for everybody. It's very meaningful. And during COVID, the time where a lot of districts we're all suffering through this. We told everyone, you're not allowed to come to school, contact tracing, that whole thing, and trying to get everyone back on track coming to school was difficult. And so that's where a lot of those deficits started popping up. We have done a better job with attendance. There's always room for attendance improvement on that. So we're hoping to keep getting better there. And so child nutrition budget covered, and then debt service budget that we are recommending a balanced budget there. Again, this is the budget associated with the INS tax rate. This is that funds our long-term bond debt that we pay for annually. So expecting a balanced budget here as well for our debt service. And then ultimately, this is what you have on your agenda item tonight is the general fund with a slight surplus there, child nutrition fund where that planned expenditure there to make sure we don't lose that excess money. We're only allowed to keep a certain amount of those federal funds, and that's the reason behind that. And then debt service balance budget. Ultimately, this is what is on your agenda item. And then we built this budget on assuming a flat tax rate. There's a lot of moving parts right now for tax rate. I just want to remind you all that we bring you the tax rate in September for adoption, so there's still some time for that to play out. The reason why I have it flat is because the increase to the homestead exemption will decrease our values pretty significantly. And we'll wait to see, HCAD will give us those numbers towards the end of July. So we'll come back to you in September with a tax rate, a final tax rate for adoption. And if you all approve of this budget, then we will get started on loading the budget. This will go into effect July 1st. The salary changes for July contracts would take effect on July 15th, payroll, August contracts, August 15th, September contracts, September 15th. So with that, any questions?
I just wanted to thank you so much, Mr. Beatty, and the Finance Committee and your team for all of the hundreds of hours of work that went into this. And, you know, it's just such a priority for us to have a balanced budget, and really, really appreciate your work on this. I know it's not easy.
Thank you.
How old are you? I'm just kidding, just kidding.
That's not an appropriate question.
You know,
Yeah, 21.
are you really? Just out there as a disclosure, my beautiful bride is also a teacher in the district, as is Mrs. May, a non-087, non-classroom teacher, this year coming up. And she, like you, though, is at the end of her career, and it's more for the teachers that are 30, 35, 40 that we're hearing from. They call my wife or call me directly. And, you know, there's some out there that are really struggling as single moms, sometimes 2 children, breadwinner, for whatever their family circumstances are. And I'm really glad to hear that Representative Cunningham came here and he said that this is just the beginning, that will be addressed, that very issue, I'm assuming, in the future. So that was very assuring that they heard it, because I was somewhat skeptical about that issue in passing the budget, but that kind of turned my mind around. And my question to you is, you used the expression, you didn't use it tonight though, you looked under every cushion, but for all the change you could find, but I steal that from you now. But is there anything?
That tells you how old I am, that I still, you know, dealt with change and looking for change under cushions as a kid.
It comes with age. Is there anything you think that it's possible that we didn't adopt the budget tonight, that you could go back and scour to somewhat close the gap between the non-PEEMS 087 and all the other teachers? Or are you in full confidence, as I am with Representative Cunningham, that this is going to be addressed, that this is, I know it's a couple of years until it gets addressed, but is there anything you think that's out there? Or you're very confident that we should stand here?
I have 110% confidence that we have done everything we can at this moment in time to find all of the funding able to try to delicately balance all of these needs. I feel the only way we would be able to do anything is cuts, and cuts would take some, I don't know the impacts without, you know, significant analysis. I don't know that that type of analysis would be able to be effective by June 30th, when we're required to adopt a budget. But like I said, we're not going to give up. We're proud that we were able to do what we did. I feel, you know, for us to not have any cuts to these areas, you see how difficult it's been for all of our peers, and to be able to likely exceed what they're doing for the districts that still have these positions. You know, that we are giving it 100% every day. I can say that with ultimate confidence, and we're not giving up. This doesn't stop today. So we'll keep on going for that every day.
Okay. I just want to say as well, from me, thank you very much for all the work you do all year. And if we adopt tonight, you start when you get home tonight working on next year's budget.
That's exactly
and it's a
right.
never-ending job. So
Yeah, that's right.
thank you, sir, very much for everything.
Yeah, and I appreciate very much Representative Cunningham saying this is a start, so I can actually get some sleep over the next 2 years. So.
All right. So, and with that, we will now vote. Mr. Silva, do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. President. I move to approve the 2025 to 2026 budgets for the General Fund, the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program Fund, and the Debt Service Fund as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Parker?
The motion is seconded by Mrs. Parker. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, the motion passes. 7-4. I'm sorry. 7 for the motion. 7 for the motion. 7 for the motion. Okay. Next is 2B, 2025-2026 compensation plan. Mr. Silva, do I have a motion?
Yes, sir. I move to approve the proposed 2025 to 2026 compensation plan.
Do I have a second? Second. Motion is seconded by Mr. Scarfo. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Grabowski.
Mr. Gardner, is it accurate to say that for the teachers that are not getting the $5,000 raise in base pay, that the difference between the non-PEAMS 087 teachers and the teachers that are in the classroom, that the difference is not $5,000, that we took some money, the allotment money, and that their raises ended up being less than that the difference is less than $5,000?
That's correct.
Do you have an estimate of what that difference is? Because it does soften the blow and close the gap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for them to hear, I believe, that they don't think they're going to be $5,000 a year less than their peer.
So the average is roughly around $2,500 is what we're talking about between these two pay scales.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. All those in favor? All right, the motion passes 7 for the motion. Item number C, budgetary transfers and amendments. Mr. Silva, do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. President. I move to approve the changes in functional categories for district-wide year-end expenses.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is seconded by Mr. Grabowski. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. A closed session of the board will now be held on the matters contained in the notices for this meeting. Should the board determine that any final action, final decision, or final vote be required with regard to any matter concerned in such closed session, then such final action, final decision, or final vote will be made upon reconvening of this public meeting in an open session. The time is now 7:37 p.m. The time is now 9:31. We will now reconvene into open session. All right, action items from closed session. Item 4A, personnel recommendations. Mr. Silva, do I have a motion?
Yes, sir. I move that the board approves the administration's personnel recommendations as presented in closed session with addendum.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion is seconded by Mrs. Chris Parker. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion passes 7-4. Passing the motion. 7.
FOR.
All right. Unanimous. All right. Next one, item 4C. Do I have a motion which is filling the board vacancy for trustee position number 4?
Mr. President, I move that we appoint Mr. Ken Kirchhoffer to fill position 4 with the caveat that he would publicly pledge that he would not seek re-election in May of 2027.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion is seconded by Mrs. Chris Parker. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Scarfo. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion passes, and I want to make sure I have that right. Oh, any abstentions? Of course. Any abstention? Any abstentions? Okay. I want to make sure I had that right. How many did we have? 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. The motion passes 6-4, 0 against, 1 abstention. All right, moving on to item 5A, TEA Corrective Action Plan regarding discipline of homeless students. Mr. Silva, do I have a motion?
Oh, that's the wrong,
Sorry,
that's the wrong
you
one.
missed one.
You're
We have
looking
to
at
still do
4D.
the TEA. D, 4D.
Item 4D, possible action regarding TEA complaints filed against the district. Mr. Silva, do I have a motion?
Yes, sir. I move that the board authorizes Walsh Gallegos to proceed as discussed in closed meeting regarding the TEA complaints filed against the district.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion is seconded by Mr. Grabowski. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Now moving on to action item 5A, TEA Corrective Action Plan regarding discipline of homeless students. Mr. Silva, do I have a motion?
I move that the board approve the TEA corrective action plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion is seconded by Mr. Grabowski. Any discussion? Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
Mr.
Scarfo.
President, could we ask Dr. Brown to just explain this? I don't want about what it really is, because, you hear the word TEA and corrective action plan, and if you can just give us the breadth of what this is about and how many districts are having to do this because of that law change, and that we're making sure, and tell them what the steps were, if nobody has read it, just in terms of what we're doing to make sure it doesn't happen.
Sure. So TE there is a law that you are not allowed to suspend students from school that are homeless except for certain reasons. And TEA is really beginning to follow up on this. And so we have gone from 2 years ago, we had suspended about 148 homeless students. And so Mr. Perkins and his team really started working on this with the administrators. And so that has been reduced to 26. However, we've also done some things that'll help the administrators as far as recognizing a homeless student within the PEAM system. So when they log on to that student's name, they'll be able to see right away that this student is homeless, where before it was kind of buried down and you really had to look for it. And so we've really tried to help the administrators out on this. And so it's a real push for us and our team and for our administrators, because they know that we cannot suspend homeless students except for certain reasons. So therefore, I think you'll see you've seen a huge reduction, and I think you will continue to see that. Our goal is 0. That's 0. That's our goal, and that's our expectation. And our administrators are working hard to make sure that happens, from Mr. Perkins to our assistant superintendents and our site administrators as well. So this is a real focus. However, DEA does require, because we have done that, they've required some training that's going to take place, some substantial training that's going to take place for all of our administrators this summer, just to make sure that we're all focused on this.
Question. How many years outside of, I think, last year and again this year, have we been out of compliance? So, I mean, I know you said 2023,
Well, the law passed in what, it was 2019, and so I don't know that we've really been tracking it until recently, and so I can't give you an answer other than when we did start tracking it, we were doing it, so you would have to assume we were doing it beforehand as well.
Okay.
And suspending students that were homeless. And, when you suspend a student, it's because of some major disruption, most likely, to the campus. So in our administrators' defense, they're trying to handle a situation that's gone on in the campus to keep the campus safe. And
Absolutely.
so through that process, they will at times have to suspend students. And again, because we had I think really the homeless identification buried in the system, in our administrator's defense, you had to look for it. I mean, you had to find it. Now, Mr. Perkins has corrected that, and IT, and they've corrected that. So when I pull up the screen, it's right in my face, so I can see it. And
So how long has that new process been in place?
Started
in
last year.
September this year? So we went from, due to that being in place, we went from
148.
148 to 26.
Correct. And actually, even after January, we had what? I think like 19 the first semester, and then Mr. Perkins really, and the team, assistant superintendents and the administrators really started focusing on it and addressing it with administrators and working with the administrators, and it went down to 5 that semester,
in the second
this
semester.
past semester. So we've made good headway, but we understand that it needs to be at 0.
100%. Yes, sir.
Let me just follow up, Dr. Brown, how many districts across the state have been, 'cause I believe you referred to it in your email, but just how many were in this?
Do you remember, Mr. Perkins?
There was one article that quoted 460,
400,
but
yeah.
don't quote me on that.
460, yeah, okay.
I'm quoting
So-
another article that was written in one of the.
My only
news
point being, we
organizations.
weren't alone in this, and.
No,
But it's
no,
not that,
no.
that's not an excuse, but it just.
It's not an
but
excuse,
They
but.
finally are pushing it, and fine, you know, that's good.
And, you know, if that's the expectation and that's the law, we should be following it. And so that's our goal, is we want to be at 0. It's kind of like when they come out, TA does audits of our facilities, you know, as far as being able to penetrate. We want to make sure we're at 0.
So I just want to make sure we understand, right? What is the corrective action plan summary for, I guess, the schools where the infractions are taking place? How are they being coached up on it not happening? Because I think, I just want to make sure we understand the seriousness of it, right? When you suspend somebody that is homeless, sometimes the school is their only place for shelter, safety, and food. So when we suspend them and they're already homeless, that means that they're not getting an education, of course, right? Which again, most of the time it most likely could be their fault, but they get the safety and sometimes no food, and that's not there. So yes, you're right. Even one is a tragedy, right? But I just want to know what is being handled from an accountability perspective at the campus level.
So all of our campus administrators go through McKinney-Vento training regarding the rules for off-campus suspending. So when we use the suspension word, we're talking about really off-campus suspensions. They do that annually every July. All of our administrators receive that. And so when this became more of a focus area for us in September of this year, we retrained all the administrators again in September specifically, all of our campus administrators, from building principals all the way down to our assistant principals. That training took place in September. Okay. And then in November, when we were going to monitor this monthly, and in November when we started to see that we were still and we put the critical alert in September as well. So we put some things that we put additional training in place, put the critical alert in place in September. In November, when we realized we were still having way too many students being suspended off campus that were homeless, we put some additional measures in beginning in January that were to hold building principals and assistant principals accountable for when they made errors and suspended students that were homeless off campus. And so once we put those additional measures in place, which was either, I would just say it's addressed formally with the administrators, either through an email, it might have been a formal memo, and or ended up showing up on their summative evaluation at the end of the year. So,
So which one was it? Which one is it? Email, summative, evaluation,
it could have
tucked
been
in
all
the
three
file?
for some administrators. It might have been just one for some administrators.
Why is it,
depending
so,
on-
and
on the
I don't want to
situation.
interrupt you, but I was just wondering, so why is it for some just an email, some it's in their file? What creates it? Because it's an infraction, right?
Yes, sir. It's an infraction. Well, in the first semester, we were giving grace. In the second semester, I began to crack down on it again. I didn't give the specific instructions to my assistant superintendents, to building principals that said that everybody must receive a formal letter or this. My instructions to my assistant superintendents at the time was that they had to formally address that with the administrator. And that's what all the administrators were told. I didn't, at that point in time, say that every AP that suspends a student is going to receive a formal, written-up memorandum.
And why not?
Because I was, again, giving grace and allowing autonomy for my assistant superintendents to handle that with building principals and then handle that with their assistant principals.
Understand.
Going into this year, as we learned, we still had 5 in the second semester, and like Dr. Brown mentioned, that's not acceptable to me. 0 is acceptable to me. So
100%.
moving into the beginning of this year, after the 3 different trainings they're going to go, extensive training they're going to go through, they can't say, well, I didn't know, I missed it in the system. There's no more excuses at that point. And so my directive for the 25-26 school year to my assistant superintendents that will make its way to the building principals and the assistant principals will be, you will receive a formal memorandum and get written up. And then it will also show up on your, and be marked accordingly on your summative evaluation for the year. And then if it's the same administrators that were suspending kids in the 24-25 school year that are suspending them in the 25-26 school year, we'll need to have some conversations about whether or not that campus administrator is in the right position in the district, or do we need to look for somewhere else for them to.
Accountability.
So the consequences and the accountability will ramp up if you've done it multiple times. Everybody makes a mistake. We formalize it and we move on. But if you make the same mistake over and over, well, then it's time to have a little further discussion about, where is the right spot for you in the district.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Appreciate it.
Oh,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry, go ahead, Mr. Grabowski, please.
Please, Mr. Grabowski.
Mr. Perkins, this just hit me now. I would have asked this question a week or two ago. When the principal or the assistant principal, they're going to suspend a McKinney-Vento or homeless student, a red banner comes across the computer screen, correct?
That's correct.
Could gain their attention. There are probably other items that are very critical that could also have a colored banner, I would think, in a system. They're not coming to my mind right now. Do we have any, and I'm relating it to flying, and a small checklist, and I've talked to Chief and Safety about putting checklists together, so that not only does it have the red banner, but it has the few steps that go into a little checklist, like the 5 or 10 things that might be so critical for the superintendent and for you as the deputy superintendent and all the staff to get these correct, that the red banner would also direct them to go to a checklist, because then their next step is to go to the assistant superintendent, depending on which.
That is the step. That's what it says now. So we went through several iterations from September of what it needed to say. And so we have landed on at this point that red banner that comes across the screen specifically says, I just want to make sure I quote correctly. It says crisis alert, assistant superintendent approval before suspending out of school. So either both the assistant principal, if he's handling or she is handling the discipline, or the discipline, the assistant principal's secretary at the secondary level will also see that. And so they're not to proceed any further unless they have my assistant superintendent's approval to move forward with that. And then that's when they can describe the situation that occurred, because there are the most serious violations, like having a weapon on campus, committing a felony. There are drug, alcohol type situations that you can suspend a McKinney-Vento student off campus. So there are some allowable reasons for more serious offenses, guns, drugs, things of that nature that you can. So that's why so few of these should happen in that situation, that the assistant principal and the building principal need to get the advice of the assistant superintendent to make sure that we're marking things correctly.
Thank you.
I mean, Mr.
It's okay, it's all right. I just want to follow up then, Dr. Brown, how is this federal act, is it held outside of, we talked about that legislation tonight, the Teachers' Bill of Rights, and had talked about disruptive students being taken out. Are the students who fall under this federal law not part of that, unless it just remains an in-school suspension?
Well, Mr. Bakley can probably help us with this, but nothing's changed as far as the homeless suspension that I'm aware of.
No, and so the removing the students from the classroom does not necessarily mean out-of-school suspension or an exclusionary disciplinary measure. It may include ISS while it gets figured out the situation. We go through those processes. We're certainly going to have to see how some of these statutes may align. Of course, federal law does take precedent over state law, but I anticipate we're going to be able to make these align, and that new statute should not be an excuse to be providing homeless or McKinney-Vento students with OSS outside of the appropriate behavior codes that would allow it.
And I would like to commend, even though we still have some, Mr. Perkins, the assistant superintendents, the administrators, 'cause I do think they are paying attention to this because it has improved significantly. We're just not there at zero. And so we'll get there.
We will. Thank you, Mr. Perkins, and to your team. Thank you. All right. All those in favor of passing the corrective action plan regarding discipline of homeless students may, all those in favor? All those opposed? I think we are. All right, I believe the motion passes unanimously. The time is now 9:49. This meeting is now adjourned.